arrived, reached just now from near and far. Some have come all the way from New Mayapur. We walked a long way from top floor, from the guest house, 1 or 2. Some of you've even come as far as Akiye and Paris. There's another program being prepared on the other side of the property there.
Yes.
A grand affair. We're hoping, it looks good so far, we're hoping the weather will be steady.
Yeah.
So far it looks quite good, and we
Yeah.
hope it stays like this. We want it to be nice for them. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Malama Girivara Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhava ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaura Prema, all glories to the Savior, all glories to Shri Guru and Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Sarvate Devi Gauravani Kacharine Nirvasesha Sunyadi Our dear devotees from Germany, a long way. When did you arrive?
Saturday.
Oh, you've been many days. Hare Krishna. Some have returned from England. Many things are going on all over the world. Krishna consciousness to different degrees is becoming present. So today we are reading. Did we read the Sankirtan scores already? Yeah. We did, okay. Becoming present. Sankirtan book distribution continues to go on. Prabhupada said it's eternal. How it manifests in the spiritual world may be a little different. But this principle of the heart of Radharani to spread messages of Krishna, always chanting the glories of Krishna, goes on eternally. So today we're reading from the 10th canto, chapter 8. Which text?
30.
And 30. It's a very long verse. I'm not going to ask you to repeat it. We'll just read it through and move along. The title of the chapter is Lord Krishna Shows the Universal Form. And let's see what subject matter is when we come to it. I don't know if there's any suitable meter for this long verse. Yesterday also was a very long verse. Hastagraye vachayati viding pitakolu kaladyas. Chedvam hanta nihitavayana shikyabandeshu tatvit. Vantagare titamani ganam svangramartapadipam. Kale gopyo nahi griha krityeshu suvyagrachita. Hasta agraye. We do Om Namo, we did quickly. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Astagraye. When the destination is out of the reach of his hands. Vachayati, he arranges to make it him a means. Pitaka, by wooden planks piled together. Ulukala, Adyaihi, and by overturning the stone mortar for grinding spices. Chidra, a hole. He, indeed, anta nihita, about the contents of the pot. Vayunaha, with such knowledge. Shikya, hanging by a swing. Bandeshu, in the pots. Tatvit, expert in that knowledge. Or in full knowledge. Dvanta agare, in a very dark room. Drita maniganam, because of being decorated with valuable jewels. Svaangam, his own body. Artapadipam, is the light required for seeing in darkness. Kale, after that, in due course of time. Gopyaha, the elderly gopis. Yarhi, as soon as. Griha krityeshu, in discharging household affairs. Suvyagrachitaha, are busily engaged. Translation and purport. When the milk and curd, when the word curd is used here, it refers to what we call yogurt or dai. It's not, cheese or paneer. It's yogurt. When the milk and curd are kept high on a swing, hanging from the ceiling, and Krishna and Balarama cannot reach it, they arrange to reach it by piling up various planks and turning upside down the mortar for grinding spices. We probably don't use mortars very much here for grinding spices. Maybe a very small one, isn't it? Mortar and pestle, the little stone thing. But they would have very big ones. A little tiny one is not going to help much. They're big, grinding a lot of spices. They may use them for grinding other things in different cultures also. Being quite aware of the contents of a pot, they pick holes in it. An interesting sentence, how that can be carried over, and sometimes when people think they're aware of the contents within us, they pick holes in us. While the elderly gopis go about their household affairs, Krishna and Balaram sometimes go into a dark room, brightening the place with the valuable jewels and ornaments on their bodies, and taking advantage of this light by stealing. Beautiful meditation. Purport by disciples of Srila Prabhupada and Janananda Maharaja and others. Purport. Formerly in every household, yogurt and butter were kept for use in emergencies. But Krishna and Balaram would pile up planks so that they could reach the pots, and would then pick holes in the pots with their hands so that the contents would leak out and they could drink it. This was another means for stealing butter and milk. When the butter and milk were kept in a dark room, Krishna and Balaram would go there and make the place bright with the valuable jewels on their bodies. On the whole, Krishna and Balaram engaged in stealing butter and milk from the neighborhood houses in many ways. Hare Krishna. What do you, when hearing this verse and purport, what do you think about? What's on your mind? What in this verse and purport would you say resonates with you? Yes, Jason.
These are mischievous little imps.
Mischievous little imps. Okay, we'll take that in a positive way. We don't want to be addressing Krishna with any offensive statements. Mischievous little, use the word imp. So that can be used positively or negatively, depending on the relationship. Parents may sometimes call their children, but they don't mean it exactly like that. It's a very familiar and very it can be very almost humorous statement. Yes, and Gaurangi had her hand up.
Well, it says that they put holes in the pot with their fingers, but the pots are made of earth, they're hard, so it's pretty amazing.
They must have had hard fingers.
Amazing fingers.
Yeah. Transcendental fingers. I was thinking the same thing. Little children, little tiny kids, hard clay pots, it's pretty hard to break through them, they're full up with whatever, yogurt, milk, butter, whatever it is, it's ghee. It's pretty hard to bust through with your little finger. And if you do, it's likely that it's going to be quite an avalanche of milk or whatever it is coming out. So that's definitely a transcendental interaction going on there between the fingers, the pot and the ingredients, and the thief. Especially the thief has a big part to play in this. He's not an ordinary thief. I don't know, what's the Sanskrit word for thief? Is it mentioned in the verse? I don't know. I think it is. If you haven't got the book. But it could well be mentioned in the verse. It's a very long word for word. I can't see it. It says expert in that knowledge, but I mean, they're expert in the knowledge of breaking pots with their fingers. Cut with it. He doesn't say what, but it says expert in that knowledge. And there's certainly expert thieves. No one's such an expert thief as Krishna, especially Krishna and Balaram. They're the most expert at theft. We always get caught. Well, they got caught too. But they'd always get away with it. There's so many stories of their mischievous acts. What else sticks out in this verse? Anything else? Krishna's finger sticks out. What else? Focus on
I was thinking, I felt a great interesting contrast between these little cute pastimes of little children in the village and great sages speaking and hearing about that, Shukadeva Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit, and even the August assembly here.
And it is August too. It's August assembly right now.
It's interesting, the big contrast, you know.
It's weird, isn't it? You could apply that to many of the pastimes. Of course, it's usually referred to the intimate pastimes of Krishna in his Madhurya Ras with the gopis, how celibate, renounced sages are relishing these pastimes. It seems quite odd. And that's a really incredible meditation and a reminder for us neophytes also, whatever we are, that there they are, the most elevated sages in the universe, from Vyasadeva to Narada, all the way, thousands and thousands of sages, both on the banks of the Ganga or Yamuna, listening to Shukadeva Goswami speak, or in Naimisharanya listening to Sutta Goswami speak. They're the most elevated, learned, many of them most renounced, no interest in sense gratification whatsoever, no interest themselves, although of course they're preaching or giving their association to grihastas, but no interest in all these affairs. But the behavior or the pastimes of this little mischievous boy captivate their hearts completely. They're absorbed in these pastimes, lapping them up, hankering to hear the next one. What's next? What's next? I'm not, I'd say, like many devotees, a reservoir of Krishna Katha. I usually have to remind my Kali Yuga memory of various pastimes, etc., etc. But this subject matter is so unlimited. It's unlimited. It's not just one little. I remember when I was a kid, we may say something like that, one little pastime. But these pastimes are unlimited. We're just getting the tip of an iceberg here. It's like if you think, well, if that's all there was to talk about, no. We're just getting a little bit of what was talked about. Just a tiny drop. It's just a tiny little hole in an unlimited, not even a pot, an unlimited sphere of subject matter. referring to Krishna's transcendental presence, existence, and that one. Anything else? Somebody else? Yes? Vijay.
Two things I noticed. You speak about the valuable jewels on the body, and the last three words, in many ways.
In many ways.
Yeah.
The last three words.
Stealing butter and milk from the neighbourhood houses in many ways.
Oh, in many ways. Where was that?
At the very
Am I
end.
on the wrong verse? Oh, in the purport. Okay, so I'm looking at the verse. You're way ahead of me. You're in the purport. Okay, yes. And engage in stealing butter and milk from, a very good point, from the neighbourhood houses in many ways. What other ways? Well, anyone know?
Since it is eternal every day, must be really many ways.
Many ways, yeah. Krishna's not limited. That's for sure. No matter how much even in our society, this material society, if you're a thief, we're all thieves in one way. And we're all trying to obtain sense gratification. If it's thwarted, means prevented, in one way, we try to find another way, don't we? We never stop trying to get sense gratification. So one who's claimed or acclaimed, one who's considered a thief amongst thieves, this is the actual situation, but specifically declared a thief, they will find, if they can't get what they want in one way, they'll find another way, isn't it? They never stop looking for new ways to achieve their goals. Material world basically is like that. As we have probably heard many times, it is considered like a reflection of the spiritual world, but perverted. And the living entities are also considered to be, in their own ways, imitating Krishna. And certainly in this regards, this tendency, children, perhaps it's a little bit more visible. Children are not necessarily so good at hiding things. A little more visible. Many times children have this same mentality that we see here, isn't it? Quite common. I was talking to one Brahmin, I can't even remember who it was. Oh, I won't mention their name, one Brahmin in Paris. They said they were always stealing things when they were a kid. I guess we all did to a certain degree. Right, Mandakini? I'm not pointing at you particularly. I'm just asking for your comment. Pardon?
It seems actually when we become devotees,
We have this tendency when we're devotees.
we become children again.
We become children again, yes.
And in the beginning, some devotees were actually stealing, saying that they were rescuing.
They were stealing?
They were stealing, saying they were rescuing things for Krishna.
Rescuing souls. Well, Prabhupada kind of indicated that he was also stealing like that in a sense. And sometimes within, we sometimes see even, aside from the, let's say, the spiritual aspect of stealing, sometimes within there's borderline cases, and sometimes there's cases across the border of devotees stealing. I think we had a case just this weekend in Paris actually. And it happens quite frequently that this old habits or whatever it is that causes it come up and, inappropriately. There's we could say sometimes it's authorized, or let's say situations which may be justifiable, but in general not so much. A justifiable, can you think of a justifiable situation where you might, and I'm not saying you should either, you might steal in the Hare Krishna movement? Oh, you're very on the ball, Bijoy.
Hunger?
You must have a lot of experience.
Hunger?
What do you do when you're hungry?
Look for food.
Pardon?
You look for food.
You look for food. You steal it?
It happens.
Okay, now we know what's been going on. I wonder what happened with the Mangalarti sweets. I think that's probably the most common, I don't know about here, but I think in ISKCON that's probably the most common object of theft in our movement. Other than the the unauthorized or the not so good aspects.
I wasn't referring to myself.
No, I know, you're never referring to yourself, you're so selfless, you're always... but it's very common. I don't know if they have that experience here. I mean, I don't know if the pujari falls into that category. Where the line is with the pujari, how many Mangalarti sweets or samosas they're authorized to take from the Maha and put aside for their own dinner or breakfast or whatever it is, midnight meal. You must have experienced this, especially in the old days, isn't it?
Great.
Maha thieves.
Great.
Pardon?
It was great.
It was great. It was one of the most exciting things. We are not proposing you should introduce this as a policy of the... We don't have enough. In those days, I'm going to say those days, I don't know those days, but there would be many, many preparations offered. It wasn't one sweet, it would be 8, 9, 10 sweets offered at Mangalarti. Sometimes I remember on special days, on Janmashtami, we had a minimum in London of 64 Mangalarti sweets, minimum. Maybe 1,008 at lunchtime like that. We may not be able to do that now. But the principle is still the same. I can see Vasimati, she's getting very excited over there, I can see. She's thinking, now I'm a pujari in Paris. I've got access. Sometimes it's still on the altar and we're thinking about what we're going to do with it once it's off the altar. Especially for the pujari. I don't know if anyone's experienced that. That's not very good, to say the least. It sometimes happens, doesn't it? And we've had, I mean, you could go on and on with this, really. And even in the middle of the night, sometimes devotees raid. It may not even be offered, that sometimes, that consideration sometimes is not strong enough to resist the urge sometimes. But if it's offered, we had and you probably got some fascinating stories here. Many ways, okay. The many ways, okay, is a pujari who steals, well, let's not say stealing, but perhaps takes a little bit more than your share in the Mahaprasadam. That's a sort of normal, common affair. Or you're serving and you put aside 10 samosas for yourself and half a samosa for everybody else. Sorry, Prabhu, there's none left. I've told stories like that before, probably here, of the effect of such reasoning. I think I've told that famous story in my early days in London, in Bury Place, Sunday feast, a boxing match, literally a boxing match. I think you've all heard that. I don't have many stories, I keep repeating them. That's the same thing here. The same story is repeated again and again, isn't it?
Boxing match.
Boxing match. Have you recovered from your boxing match? You should stop boxing. It looked like someone punched you on your cheek. It's gone down now. You had an abscess. Yeah. Well, for the sake of a laugh, we'll tell, it's kind of a steal. It's not exactly stealing, but it's something like it. A Sunday feast in London, Bury Place, 1972. We would cook The devotees would cook. That day, one of the best cooks cooked the feast. His name was Jai Hari. You would know Jai Hari Mandakini. I don't know if anyone else knows him. I saw him just last year. He came to the retreat. He was dancing and chanting. He'd been away for like 45 years. And he was so into it. It was just like he never left. So enthusiastic. It was so nice. But he was a cook. He was born in Pakistan. He was Muslim by birth. And Prabhupada disciple. He was like temple secretary. He was one of them. Actually, he was one of the main person who cultivated big people. Even George Harrison and people like this behind the scenes. He had this celebrity mood. But he also had this mood of couldn't help it, you know. In the middle of the night he'd come back and go down to the kitchen and feast. In various ways. He would find different ways. Anyway, that wasn't the story we're going to tell. The story is that he was a great cook. So he cooked the Sunday feast that day, but quality was above quantity in his cooking. Some have quantity, some have quality, some have both, and some have neither. I don't know which is the worst of the four or the best. I think quality and quantity is the best. Everyone's happy with that one. But the other three are not sure. You make your own mind up there. But in this particular case, quality was definitely above quantity. And everybody knew that. He was a one-off cook. And so everyone was eager. They had a system. If you remember the prasadam room, we have a long-term relationship with that prasadam room. That was my first meeting with Mandakini, referring to the prasadam room. And it was a small room. It was just an ordinary sized house room, basically. It was the prasadam room. You could get 20 people sitting in there, maybe at most. So they would lock the door of the prasadam room. The pots would come through into the prasadam room, then they would lock the door, and the chosen servers would set the prasadam up to serve the feast. They had a little table, serving pots on the table, and when the door would open, it was like the Bombay ticket office, if you've ever been, what it used to be like. That if you were at the front and you weren't strong, you'd end up, if you were still conscious, at the end. As the stampede to get to the front of the queue would begin. As soon as it was like a stampede. You know what a stampede is? What's a stampede? You know the French word stampede?
Everybody's rushing together.
Everyone like a mad rush, you know. Like, you know, might makes right, you know. And it was like you almost had to have somebody there, you know, guarding the line. It's like, line, in India there, line, you know, and everyone pushing and shoving to get to the front, you know. I was into that. I didn't care. I just waited at the back. I didn't like pushing and shoving. I certainly didn't like boxing, that's for sure. So, I don't know, I just said that with whatever Krishna gives us. But there was definitely a limited number of samosas, gulab jamans, malpuras. I mean, he cooked all the best preps, you know. You know, it makes your mouth water, doesn't it? You're waiting for the feast to take, and the wedding hasn't been offered yet. Control your senses. I know what they're cooking. I was in the kitchen at 1 o'clock this morning with a cook. And he cooked all the best of the best. And he was the best of the best. Almost. Janananda was the best of the best. They were both there themselves. And many others too. Balagopal. So many cooks were there. We had some great cooks there, as you probably did here too. The devotees were great cooks in those days, weren't they? Amazing cooks. It was like a really big thing to be a good cook, and nobody speculated. Everybody learned how to cook just the way it should be. That's how it was. It wasn't time to speculate. It had to be just nice, the way Prabhupada would like it. So he cooked so well. And the devotee in front of me is one of very nice young man. We got initiated later together. And his name was Dhiranayaka. I don't know if you ever knew Dhiranayaka. Dhiranayaka was such an amazing soul. But he had one amazing quality. He was a prasadam addict. It was like if anything captured his heart, it was prasadam. Even on Sankirtan, we had one time, maybe in 73, to everyone we would give a sweet ball. Everyone made these sweet balls, simply, like a Simply Wonderful. And his mantra was one for you, one for me. His mantra. And he was so spaced out all the time. He couldn't stop eating sweets. We'd have breakfast, and I don't know what it was like in France. I don't know. And when I actually joined the temple, you'd left. When I was coming as a guest, you were there. But when I actually moved in, you were not there. But so I can't speak of before that. But when I moved in, breakfast was a big bowl of semolina pudding. You know, semolina, farina, suji, whatever you call it. You make halava with it. But there was no butter in it. It was just boiled semolina, no milk, but tons of sugar. So it's so sweet you couldn't resist. It was just basically you're eating, sugar, semolina sugar. And you couldn't. Devotees would eat 3, 4, 5 bowls, and these bowls were 1 liter bowls. They weren't small bowls. And you can imagine the effect of that. So many devotees to this day cannot hardly eat anything from that era. And he was he was a sugar addict. And if you were lucky, you got 8 or 9 chickpeas. That was like the real speciality. That was like what do you call it? The real, you're hankering for another chickpea. And they were boiled. They weren't cooked. They were just soaked overnight. They weren't cooked at all. They were just soaked in water overnight, raw in a sense.
It was Prabhupada recipe.
Huh?
Srila Prabhupada recipe.
Srila Prabhupada recipe.
With lemon and ginger.
But this is a luxury. This is when this is the luxury version. We wouldn't even have that sometimes. It was just soaked overnight, full stop. There's salt in the water, salty water. And then sometimes we would fry them, and a little ginger, and fry them up in the morning, and then squeeze some lemon. That's if you were really opulent. We didn't have all these opulences, and sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. That was on a special day. So he cooked this fantastic feast, and Dhiranayaka Prabhu, who was like, unfortunately he was tall and thin, and somehow he was near the back of the queue. I don't know why, never asked him. So we could see as the queue went down, there was only about 25 devotees in the temple, so it wasn't a very long queue, but he cooked about 20, there was about 20 samosas in the tray, or maybe 22 or something like that, and the same with the gulabs, and everything was like limited, counted almost. And so then we got to close to the queue, we could see that the gulabs had just run out, and then the samosas had run out, and then this had run out, and that. There was rice, there was dal, there was sabji. What's wrong with that? But he was getting quite irritable. He was like shaking almost, And then we got to the front. Literally speaking, all these specialities were no longer available. It was a disaster. And I can't repeat word for word, but pretty close. I won't repeat every word, but pretty close. Where's my samosa? There's none left. This is not fair. 3 Nadapi, I'll bet you've got one, haven't you? Because the servers would save their prasadam, before they started serving. They would put their place. They would put cardboard boxes on top of their plates so no one could see it. And so, our dear Prabhu, I bet you've got one. Mind your own business. These are almost word for word. It's amazing how these things stick, you know. I can't remember anything about Krishna, but I can remember all these strange pastimes. And he said, "Is that your plate under that box? Get your hands off it." No! Bong! He kind of jumped and smacked the box off. 8 samosas, 8 gulaps. Give me one! No! Yes! No! Yes! No! Bang! 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 All over the prasadam, and they're punching each other across the prasad room. Sunday feast, love feast. Sunday love feast. Incredible. Wow, this is one of my first Sunday feast parties. This is really loving exchanges here. And there are how many rasas are there? How many? Who knows? 12 rasas. These are one of the 7 indirect rasas, but it's not meant to be the prominent one. But it became the prominent one here. It was definitely an interesting experience. Anyway, it shouldn't be like that. So that's like it's one kind. Another, yes, Gandharva.
You get the samosa again.
I don't. The whole thing was such a mess. I can't. That part I can't remember. It shook me up so much seeing them punching each other. I don't even know what happened. Probably did. Anyway, another one, which is you probably had even funnier ones here, but this was at the manor. This was probably 76. Probably. Maybe 77. No, it would have been 77 because Vichajurapur was the TP. It must have been 77. And after Mangal Arti, the sweets, because there was quite a lot of sweets offered, Mangal Arti sweets, they would be locked up, and distributed. We had a system. We used all the Mangal Arti sweets, most of them, except for the special guests, were given to the new bhaktas. The new bhaktas would have, first-class prasadam every day. And they were locked up. But we were noticing that every day, many of them were disappearing before, breakfast. Nothing unusual. Usually there's none left before breakfast. But we were purposely trying to keep them. So they were disappearing. So we locked them in the president's office. And then we noticed they were still disappearing. Is it the president himself, maybe, who's stealing them? Not surprising. Especially here in New Mayapur, we know what goes on behind those closed doors. But no, it wasn't the president. What's going on? We locked them in. Then we kept a guard in the cupboard. Like this big cupboard there, in the corner of the office. So we put one devotee in there to see what was going on. And sure enough, because we put them in just before Mangal Arati, you see. Sure enough, during the Mangal Arati, suddenly, I had this experience last night. I had no idea Jaini Taipa was sleeping in my room upstairs. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I went in the room because I couldn't sleep. So I went in to start doing some work, and that's what I was meeting. And I opened the door and scream, I didn't know who it was. I quickly locked that out. I don't know what was going on. And I don't know what they thought either. They sounded shocked, It was Jainatai. I don't know if he's alone, but he was sleeping up there. I daren't go in to find out. So the guard in the office suddenly heard. The window had come off. The window. The maintenance crew had found a way in through the window. It was the maintenance crew. I don't know if our maintenance crew are here today. Yes, they found a way in. They were taking the window off. They'd done it, we used to do this on Sankirtan. we would go to a university to preach in the evening, and we would leave one window into the bathroom slightly ajar. So in the morning we would come, open the window from the outside, climb up the wall and down into the bathroom to take a shower, go back to our vehicle again. So they were more expert than that. They actually were able to, arrange it so that they could get in. I don't know how they did it, but they did. The screws and everything, they arranged it so they could get in. So they were caught eventually. Very clever way of stealing the mana. Many other ways of stealing the hair. I remember when I first became the temple president, I'm giving you we want you to become expert at least at something. When I was temple president in Auckland, the first thing I noticed in terms of the money was that every Sunday the arty tray would go around. You don't do that here much, but the arty tray would come around. A lot of Indian people, they all liked, especially the Gujaratis, they like to put money, isn't it, Asika, on the arty tray. €5, €10, $10, wherever we were from. So I saw when we would open the box, donation box, Monday morning with the treasure to see what was in, there was very few notes in there. And this had been going on a long time. I looked at the records of the previous managers. There was next to nothing. They were saying, oh, a useless program. No one gives any money anyway. But that because they were never there for the Sunday program anyway. But I would be there for the Sunday program. I would see all the money going on the tray and what they were putting in the box. And I think, there's something wrong here. Something wrong. So I checked it the next week, and definitely there was money missing. So we took the box immediately after the program and locked it in the office. Just to see. And sure enough, the next week there was like 10 times as much money in the box. Same crowd. Something's going on here. The next week we did the same thing. Again, it was only a small amount. Locked in the office it was. And what I found was that the box, it looked like it was locked, but what was happened, no one checked it, was that the latch which was holding the lock was not attached to the box. So the lock was attached, but the latch, they were lifting the latch at the back of the box up, and the whole thing was open. So we locked it in the office, and then after 1 week, the same thing happened again. The same thing again. Whoever it was, we put someone in. Some of you may know Kripa Sindhu. He used to come to France occasionally. He was with us in New Zealand. We left him in the office, quite strong and sharp person. We left him in the office, locked him in, well not locked him, put him, he was in the cupboard again. In the middle of the night, again, the door was opening. And somebody had the key and they were coming in. It's amazing, huh? There are certain people like this. You can't stop them no matter what we couldn't catch him, but we never saw him again. He ran for his life, but he never came back. It's amazing, this habit, but this comes from Krishna. Now one thing is about this pastime, or any pastime, my understanding for what it's worth, and you could go into the Leela, there's so many pastimes about this Leela, and probably some others will tell or have told about the interaction between the gopis complaining to Mother Yasoda about your boy stealing our butter and yogurt. Even if we put it in the pots, he somehow or other finds it, breaks the pots and gets it. And if he doesn't get it, he pees on the floor and pinches our babies and causes every havoc you can think of. We can't stop him, and even if we're in a dark room, he seems to be able to see. And it's not just the jewels on his body. He's a fortune anyway. He doesn't depend on the jewels become a fortune because of him. Not he becomes a fortune because of them. Everything becomes beautiful because of Krishna. There's so many pastimes related to this. Hare Krishna, welcome. So good to see you again, Tarun. How are you?
Good, thank you.
And you're a wonderful team. Amazing. We were together, 20 years ago in London?
25.
25, my gosh. And you were in Hungary for a long time. Now you're back in the UK, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. He was thinking of moving to France. If you get your Gurukul together, maybe you'll think about it. Yes, who knows? Wonderful. So where were we? Where were we? Come on. Anyone still here?
Yes. Krishna is beautifying.
He's beautifying everything that comes in contact with him. And similarly, his pastimes. Is there a difference between Krishna and his pastimes? Is there a difference? Yes and no. There's variety there, but there's no absolute difference, is there? They're equally pure, they're equally transcendental, they're equally spiritual, equally everything. Isn't it, in one sense? Name, form, quality, pastimes. So if in the presence of Krishna you become purified, in the presence of his pastimes you become purified. If you have this little habit of stealing or whatever it may be, lusty habits, whatever they may be, there's a good chance. That's why it's said, if you read in many places, Chaitanya Sikshamrita, Appreciating Vrindavan Dham, and Krishna Samhita, in different literatures, we'll see that the anarthas, the unwanted habits that we have, the perverted reflections of imitation that we have of Krishna, one of the ways that they can be purified, rectified, is by hearing certain pastimes of the Lord, isn't it? So this pastime of stealing, we all have this pastime. We may accept, recognize, understand or not. We're all thieves. As we're trying to steal what is Krishna's. We're trying to steal his property and claim it as mine. So this pastime of stealing, beautiful pastime, we laugh. It's fun to hear. And even little children, sometimes you have a laugh. Even you, if you have, I used to have a pet dog, a little collie dog, when I was a little kid. And this dog also would steal. It would try, if you left somehow or another, it would try to find its way into the fridge. If the fridge was slightly open, it would, take things out of the fridge. Kind of stealing, you punish the dog a little bit, but it's like a child. They don't understand, or whatever. And you don't punish the child exactly, do you? I was saying yesterday, if you have a fruit store, for instance, and the little 3-year-old kid comes and takes a banana, are you going to call the police? Thief! Thief! Call the police all arrive. Where's the thief? There he is. 3-year-old kid. They might arrest you. Nonsense. No, you get a little bit, but you don't take it that seriously. Even there's a little Krishna, a little boy. They're getting angry. They're getting uptight about it, but they're in bliss that he's stealing. They're in bliss. You may not be in bliss when you see your mobile phone's gone. You may not be in bliss. He who gives is he who takes. We see this in our Paramahamsas. They often say, what's the big deal? He who gives takes. He gave it to you in the first place. What are you getting upset about? They will see it differently. It's all true. Everything belongs to Krishna. Every single thing is for his enjoyment. Just like we were reading recently, yesterday or day before, I can't remember. But in the Bhagavatam, in the 8th canto, Bali Maharaja, Vamadev took everything. He was a thief. Big time thief. He took everything. You could say he was offered it, but he was only offered 3 steps of land. So it was a kind of another way of stealing, isn't it? He expanded himself as big as the universe and took everything. He got cheated, at least from the mundane point of view. But it's all enjoyment. Prabhupada said in the purport, he said, Krishna did this just to enjoy his relationship with his devotee, Bali Maharaj. So he could have some enjoyable pastimes with Bali. He did this whole thing. It's all pleasure. And when we hear this activity, these pastimes enacted in their original pure form by the absolute truth, it helps to cure our disease, whether it's theft, whether it's lust, whether it's greed, whatever it may be, helps to cure it. It's not only joyful to listen to, even materially speaking, it's very popular. People like to hear about these things. Not spiritual, material. They like to hear about it, don't they? They like to hear a crime. It's kind of very... different people are different, obviously. Lusty pastimes, criminal pastimes. espionage. Right? They like to hear these things. Very popular. Because it has its origin in Krishna. Everything has its origin in Krishna. And when we hear it in relation with Krishna, then we can become pure. Everything's like that. To learn how to see everything in relationship with Krishna. Whatever it is. Purifies. Well, I'm sure you could think of and tell many related stories from the spiritual, from the transcendental plane, or from Shastric evidences, or from present experiences, whatever. But we've run out of time and we have to open. If there's anything left and it hasn't been stolen, it will be prasad on time. We hope that all that... what's the devotee's cook name from Soho Street? What was his name again? It slipped my mind. Pardon? Tirupati. Tirupati Prabhu. Hope that all the wonderful things he was cooking last night are still there. Are they still, you guarding the kitchen?
No, something was there, but I don't know if it was for breakfast or for lunch.
Oh my God. Oh, somebody knows. You're going to have a treat for the breakfast if it's not carefully maintained. Jai Prabhupada. So any comments or questions? Gaurangi?
No, we better want to give it time to steal flowers from the neighbors.
But
Whoa.
one thing about this, when we came on the road, my wife said, you know the sunflowers?
Yes.
They said at least those who took them should not have taken the whole, line just next
my
to the
God.
road,
Oh
You
my
can see
God.
it. Like,
Oh my God. Yes, sunflower season. I came in at 1 o'clock last night. I could hardly get in. The door opened down there, It was like a forest of sunflowers in the basement. I had to almost swim through the sunflowers like this. I couldn't walk through them. I had to push them aside to get in. Oh, half the basement was full of sunflowers. This is a dangerous revelation you two have revealed here. Whew. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. But what to do? It's for Krishna. I remember in Melbourne, you may have heard this famous pastime in Melbourne. It was very famous. The devotees, there's several pastimes, but this is let's say the public one. It was an amazing event. And it was Rathayatra the next day. So the habit of the devotees was to go all around Melbourne. There are these nurseries, these flower nurseries. So in the middle of the night, the devotees would go out in teams to different nurseries and pilfer the flowers. Take flowers from different, here, there, and everywhere. So in the next day in the newspaper, after the Rathayatra festival, was an article. Unknown thieves. Stealing flowers from Melbourne nurseries on the front page. Right next to that was a picture of the Rathayatra car on the same front page. Hare Krishna festival, beautifully decorated with roses, this thing, that thing, this thing. They knew it, They didn't say it. It was obvious what was going on. They did it in a very clever way, Huh? And then in Murumbar, in New Govardhan, the devotees used to go to the park, the local park in the town, when they didn't have enough flowers on the property. We should have enough flowers on the property, get it together. So they didn't have enough flowers sometimes. They go to the park in the night, raid the park. So one day, the council put a big sign up in front of the flowers. These are not Krishna's flowers. They're very easygoing in Australia, but they let you know about it, These are not Krishna's flowers. You didn't get it quite right, but you get the point, Bear that in mind. We have to make good friends with our neighbours. Please bear that in mind. Yes, Mandakini.
Yes, Maharaj, one act of stealing by one devotee had very good results. It was with dear Malati.
Malati. She was expert with stealing. Yes. Tell the famous story.
She was calling it rescuing for Krishna.
Rescuing for Krishna, yeah.
And one day she went into an import-export Indian shop and she came back with a little wooden statue.
Yes, a black-coloured
Yeah,
statue.
black color. And then Shyamasundar brought it to Srila Prabhupada, who immediately fell down on the floor. Then he called back Mariti. He said, "Did you see any more?" She said, "Hundreds." He said, "No, just a yellow one, a white one." And she said, "Yes." Prabhupada smiled and said, "Get them."
There you go, authorized.
And that's how Lord Jagannath came.
Yes.
And
So amazing, huh?
And Srila Prabhupada asked Shyamasundar, "You sculpt them big."
And these are the first deities in ISKCON, other than Prabhupada's personal little deities. These are the first deities in ISKCON. Jagannath, he has his way of doing things. Sometimes this is, but we have to make sure it is authorized. Even the Ranganath temple in South India was basically constructed by, I can't remember the Acharya, the Alvar's name. He engaged all kinds of thieves and dacoits to plunder other rich people in order to build the temple. But we don't imitate that.
And there is the story of Shushirala Loganishvara. I heard the story, that
Yes.
Prabhupada himself.
Yeah. More or less. Not entirely. I don't know which is more or which is less, but certainly there's an element of that. Another way of getting what you want. As far as the man was concerned, he felt almost that Prabhupada stole the deities from him. But he actually was offering them, but on his conditions. Prabhupada did not accept his conditions. He established the conditions, and Shamsa, man was saying, no, the deities are very heavy. We will bring them later, Swamiji. We will bring them later. No, they're not very heavy. I'm sure they're not very heavy. Tamal, how heavy is, which one ran? Shamsundar, how heavy is Krishna? Not very heavy, Prabhupada. Not very heavy, Prabhupada. Tamal, they were really heavy, but they were trying to make, when you go through the baggage check sometimes, hand baggage, you got 7 kilos, you got 20 kilos, you're like walking through, you're trying to hold it with your little finger as if there's nothing in there, It's like, when you get past the check, it was like that, Yeah, you've got to behave like you're not cheating, you're not stealing if you want to get away with it. You've got to be expert. Not everyone's expert. Some people are not so expert, they get caught even though they do everything. No matter what they do, they get caught. Some people, they're just more expert. Everyone's got an expertise, do it for Krishna, whatever it is. So that's nice. So beautiful stories in our present day and age related to this original pastime of Krishna, which brings purification, bliss, auspiciousness, everything for the whole universe. But let us continue hearing the pastimes of Krishna over and over again, which we don't do enough of. Read the Krishna book, something we always used to do daily, doesn't it? I know devotees have been reading the Krishna book every day since the day they joined this movement. They've read it hundreds of times. Does it ever get dry? Does it ever get boring? I don't know. Maybe if we're in Maya, you might feel like that. It's like ever fresh to hear. Even the pastimes in ISKCON, I must have told that pastime 100 times. It never gets dry, It's funny, huh? You always get some different angle of taste. Hare Krishna. So now I guess the wedding is getting ready to begin, and the weather is fantastic at the moment. Let's all hope that it stays like this. For so many devotees have come, I believe. And I don't know.
I just dreamt this night. I just dreamt Visheshika Prabhu telling part of Krishna book.
Who's this?
Visheshika, I had a dream.
Dream this night.
And Visheshika Prabhu, he was like a teacher in a classroom, and he was speaking verses and pastimes of the Krishna book. That was really nice.
Isn't that amazing?
Very nice.
This is what should happen. It doesn't happen with me.
Rare.
You are so absorbed in Krishna and Govardhan and pastimes of Krishna. This is what we should be doing. That's what we're here for, actually. If we become absorbed in service, that's fantastic, but the fruit of that is we become absorbed in Krishna and his pastimes. Yes, we can be absorbed in service, absorbed in the Sangha, that's fantastic too. That will give us again and again the opportunity to be absorbed in those type of services, but ultimately to become absorbed in hearing Krishna's pastimes. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Pantwaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna. Thank you for being with us this morning and tolerating and whatever else. Some of you tolerated. Krina peace and Ichena Taroga peace. It's a good answer though, wasn't it? It was a good answer of the server. He gave a good answer. You have to tolerate, Prabhu. He said you have to tolerate. Practice tolerance. Be humble.
Not now.
Yeah, not this mum. Yes. What about you? Why do you say that to me? What about you? You know very well the person who was the server. He became quite a famous devotee in ISKCON. I'll tell you afterwards. Don't embarrass anyone. I wouldn't have grappled with him if you, even over a samosa for sure. They're pretty tough.
There's a big queue there.
Pardon?
There's a big queue for prasad outside.
Outside? Oh my God, you better get there quick, otherwise we might have a repeat of, of the event. What time does the wedding begin? Does anyone know?
May I take this prize?
Of course you can.
At 9:30.
Oh.
Sans quichon.
They're always late. If they're not late, it's not right.
An account pulled by bulls.
Bull cart. They're coming in bulls. Like the last marriage we had here, they have bulls also.